Well, Peter Dutton's budget reply speech centred on a plan to reduce immigration in order to free up housing supply. The government focused on energy subsidy to help drive down inflation. But housing really is central to both major parties, and this really is going to set up the next election, a fight over housing. Live to Independent MP Allegra Spender. Allegra, thanks so much for your time. I guess housing is central to cost of living and should be at the centre of the next election, but who's got the best plan?
Look, I at the moment, I don't think we're doing either major party have enough. But to be honest, I think we know that the biggest focus for housing must be growing supply. And I think that's where, I'd say the government's doing more and more focus on this than, frankly, what we've heard so much from Dutton, which is, being focused on, super for housing, which does absolutely nothing for supply and probably not enough for the people who need it. Plus some tweaks on migration, which could have an impact, but is not actually going to be the major driver to changing this housing disaster, frankly, that we're in.
Well, the major driver is supply, and that's really controlled by the states in freeing up land, wouldn't you agree?
Look, it is, but this is where the federal government really needs to use the levers that it has. And I think this is about getting the states, basically bribing or paying the states to do everything they can to fix zoning and to make it easier to build. Now, I think government has put some money in, particularly in the last budget, into this. But I think that frankly, if I had been in the seat, I would have put more money into this budget to incentivise the states to move faster on zoning, but actually also faster on things like stopping no-fault evictions, because that actually will protect renters in the time, right now in Sydney, where renting is so expensive and where landlords have so much more power than renters.
Well, so migrants are a big part of the story, aren't they, Allegra? Particularly, I speak to you as a Sydney MP, of course. I mean, this government had in its budget that they're going to impose limits on universities for international students unless they can provide accommodation or student accommodation on site. That was designed to take pressure off the rental market. I mean, both the major parties are focusing on migration. Peter Dutton's doing it in a way that he wants to cut permanent migration by 25% and also wants to impose limits, at least just for 2 years, on foreigners buying Australian homes. Is there anything wrong with all of those points?
Look, I think the focus on international students, I think, is appropriate. It's a great export earning for us. Let's be honest. It's a great area for Australia to have international students. But we have a lot of students who are going to sort of low value courses where, effectively, they're just paying for a chance to work and live in Australia. And so I think that's where I'd be really focused on the international students, and also say to the unis, you should build accommodation. You should be, accommodating all those students who are coming in. In terms of cutting the permanent migration numbers, as the Coalition suggested, look, I will look at the policy that they put forward, but I've got concerns there, because if you look at just last year, the permanent intake was only really about 10% of the total number of people coming into the country. And 2/3 of those permanent migrants are highly skilled workers that are really critical to sort of growing productivity, and 1/3 are family. Family members effectively of Australians already. So I think that the biggest opportunity is much more in the temporary migrants, where you have people who are coming in for a short term, but keep on wanting to stay. And I don't think we're being fair to them either, because they go from temporary visa to temporary visa. They want to stay. They don't have a chance to permanency. And so I think we should be putting much more pressure downward on the temporary migrants, but make sure we can still get the best and brightest from the world into Australia, because they help our productivity, they help our businesses. That's where I think our focus should be.
What about this 2-year pause on foreign buyers?
Look, in principle, I'm not against it, but I don't think it's going to move the dial. It's, it's apparently, the numbers I've seen, it's 5,000 over the last 2 years. Now, it probably will affect the community.
That's not entirely insignificant, though. And in an electorate like yours, I know it's really at the higher end, but that would shift the market, and it all has a flow-through effect.
Sure. I mean, I think we've got we've got 11 million dwellings in the country, I think, off the top of my head. So 5,000 isn't a lot, but actually an electorate like mine, it is, because you can get, there are certain parts of the country where you get more of pressure on those sorts of from overseas non-residents. And I don't want to be the the Mayfair of Australia, where you can go around, where in some of those fancy areas of London, there aren't any people there because all these houses are held by non-residents. So
Yeah.
our community's not like that, but I think it's really important that people live in our houses. So I'm open to it, but I don't think that that's going to solve the crisis. 5,000 homes is not going to be enough to make a real difference here.
No, but for your electorate, it probably would, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's I think it could look at it, and I'm certainly going to be looking at see what I can do to get the numbers in Wentworth in particular.